The alarm bells rang through the Federation's monitoring station like screaming metal birds. Commander Zixtal's 4 eyes blinked in perfect sequence as he stared at the impossible readings on his screen. His pale blue skin turned even paler, something his species only did when facing certain death. For 300 years, the Galactic Federation had kept careful watch on the third planet, orbiting the yellow star called Sol. They had classified it as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating in their books. The planet was a nightmare of crushing gravity, poisonous oxygen atmosphere, and creatures so violent they killed each other for sport. Any species that could evolve on such a world would be apex predators by galactic standards. The Federation had sent exactly one probe to Earth. It lasted 4 minutes before something called a great white shark destroyed it in what the monitoring team could only describe as casual violence. After that, they decided to leave the death world alone and hope its inhabitants never developed space travel. But now, the impossible had happened. The distress signal the Federation had been broadcasting across the galaxy for 50 standard cycles had received an answer. Not from one of their member worlds or allied species, but from Earth, from the creatures living on that hellish death world. "Sir," said Lieutenant Vexari, her voice shaking like leaves in a storm, "the transmission is asking for coordinates to our position. They want to send military assistance." Zixtal's stomach, all 3 of them, dropped like stones. Military assistance from Deathworlders? It was like asking a supernova for help with lighting a candle. These creatures probably thought warfare was a hobby. The message came through in broken but understandable galactic standard. The voice was rough and strange, like grinding rocks. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call about something called the Void Swarm. We're ready to help. Send us coordinates and enemy data. Humanity is coming." The word humanity sent shivers through every alien on the monitoring station. They had studied the death world for centuries, watching from a safe distance as these humans fought constant wars against each other, their own planet, and everything else that moved. Their planet was covered in weapons, from simple clubs to devices that could split atoms and turn matter into pure energy. Zixtal opened the emergency channel to the Ethereal Council, the Federation's ruling body. Within minutes, 12 of the galaxy's most powerful leaders appeared as glowing holograms around his desk. Each represented a different species, and all of them looked terrified. "You cannot be serious," said Counselor Thexara, her crystal body flashing angry red colors. "Deathworlders offering military aid? They probably want to eat our enemies." "The Void Swarm has consumed 47 star systems," replied Counselor Morden, his gas form swirling with nervous energy. "Our fleets are losing every battle. Our energy weapons barely scratch their bio-armor. Maybe we need something more primitive." The Federation had been fighting the Void Swarm for 50 years and losing badly. The enemy was unlike anything they had ever faced. The swarm creatures were part machine, part living tissue, part nightmare. They consumed entire planets, turning the matter into more of themselves. Their biomechanical ships could adapt to any energy weapon within hours of first contact. Traditional Federation warfare relied on elegant plasma beams, ion cannons, and particle accelerators. Clean, efficient, civilized weapons that killed with precisely controlled energy. The Void Swarm's adaptive armor learned to deflect, absorb, or redirect these attacks. Every battle was like teaching the enemy how to become immune to Federation technology. But humans, according to their intercepted transmissions, used something called kinetic weapons. They threw chunks of metal at their enemies very, very fast. Their ships carried devices called missiles that exploded with chemical reactions. Most disturbing of all, they had nuclear weapons that turned matter directly into energy on a scale that made Federation power plants look like tiny candles. The Council argued for 6 hours. Some wanted to reject the human offer and maintain their dignity while dying slowly. Others pointed out that dignity was hard to maintain when your species was extinct. In the end, desperation won. "Send them coordinates to the Kepler border station," ordered High Counselor Yathara. "But warn them about Federation safety protocols. No weapons of mass destruction, no chemical warfare, no biological agents." Zixtal typed the response with trembling fingers. The reply from Earth came back in less than an hour. "Understood. We'll bring the safe stuff. Humanity out, the safe stuff." Zixtal wondered what humans considered dangerous if they had safe stuff for first contact. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the human fleet approaching the border station. The readings made no sense. The ships were huge, massive blocks of metal covered in what looked like extra armor, welded on top of the original armor. They moved slowly compared to Federation vessels, but they radiated heat signatures that suggested power plants running at impossible levels. "Sir," reported sensor operator Clicksoth, "the human ships appear to be carrying projectile weapons, lots of them, and the power readings suggest they're running some kind of contained fusion reactions." "Fusion reactors for power?" asked Zixtal. "No, sir. Fusion reactors for ammunition." The lead human ship, a kilometer-long monster called the USS Indomitable, opened a communication channel. Captain Sarah Chen's face appeared on screen, and every alien present took an involuntary step backward. The human looked like a predator even when smiling. Her eyes were forward-facing, designed for hunting. Her teeth were clearly built for tearing meat. Her skin was scarred in several places, suggesting she had survived multiple combat encounters. "Greetings, Federation Command," she said in a voice that carried the confidence of someone who had never met a problem she couldn't punch into submission. "We're here about your monster problem. We brought some friends." The display showed the rest of the human fleet. 67 ships, each one built like a flying fortress. Their names scrolled past on the screen: UES Righteous Fury, UES Pain Train, UES Hammer Time, UES Big Stick Diplomacy. The humans apparently named their warships like weapons or threats. "We've been fighting the Void Swarm for 50 years, Zixtal explained. "They adapt to our energy weapons. Their bio-armor learns to deflect our attacks." Captain Chen smiled, showing more of those predator teeth. "Energy weapons, huh? We tried those once. Too complicated. We prefer the direct approach." "What approach is that?" "Hit them with something heavy until they stop moving. Works on everything." The simplicity was terrifying. While the Federation had spent centuries developing elegant, efficient weapons that killed with precisely controlled energy, humans had perfected the art of throwing rocks really, really hard. Except their rocks were made of depleted uranium and moved at significant fractions of light speed. "We're ready to engage the enemy," Captain Chen continued. "Just point us at the bad guys and stand back. Earth didn't spend 10,000 years fighting everything that moved just to lose to space bugs." Zixtal realized that the Federation's distress call had been answered, but not by saviors. They had called for help against monsters and received something far more dangerous: the friendship of apex predators who considered warfare a form of creative expression. The Void Swarm had no idea what was coming for them. Neither did the Federation. Humanity had taken the distress call personally. The Federation's border station had never seen anything like the human fleet up close. When the first shuttle docked, carrying human representatives for the tactical briefing, the station's environmental systems went crazy trying to analyze their atmosphere requirements. "They breathe poison," reported Chief Medical Officer Naltara, her tentacles twitching with nervous energy. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, and trace amounts of argon. The oxygen concentration alone would kill most of our species in minutes. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stepped off the shuttle wearing what humans called dress uniform, but even their formal clothing looked designed for combat. His chest was covered in small metal decorations that appeared to commemorate successful battles. The weapon at his side was clearly functional, not ceremonial. The human delegation included specialists from something called the Marine Corps, which seemed to be soldiers whose job was fighting in the worst possible conditions. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, constantly scanning their surroundings for threats that didn't exist. The briefing room had been hastily modified with heavier chairs to support human bone density and reinforced flooring to handle their gravity requirements. When Admiral Rodriguez sat down, the chair groaned under his weight despite being designed for species twice his size. "Let's talk about your enemy," Rodriguez said, pulling up the Federation's data on the Void Swarm. His eyes moved across the tactical displays with the focused intensity of someone who made killing into a science. "Biomechanical hybrids, adaptive armor, consumption-based reproduction, nasty." Commander Zixtal nodded. "They've destroyed 47 star systems. Their bioarmor adapts to our energy weapons within hours. Our plasma cannons become useless after the first engagement." "Energy weapons," Rodriguez muttered, shaking his head. Why does everyone in this galaxy use energy weapons? They're efficient, clean, and precise, explained Tactical Officer Verani. They allow for surgical strikes with minimal collateral damage. Rodriguez laughed, a sound that made every alien in the room flinch. Surgical strikes don't win wars against something that eats planets. You need overwhelming firepower and the will to use it. He activated his own tactical display showing human weapon systems. The Federation delegates stared in horror at the primitive-looking devices. No elegant energy conduits, no quantum field generators. Just metal tubes designed to throw other pieces of metal very fast. This is a railgun, Rodriguez explained, pointing to a massive weapon mounted on the USS Indomitable. It fires a 2-ton tungsten slug at 12% of light speed. The kinetic energy release is equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. Kinetic weapons? Asked Engineer Plexodi. But the energy efficiency is terrible. You're wasting 90% of your power output. Energy efficiency doesn't matter when you have fusion reactors, replied Marine Colonel Jake Harrison. We're not trying to be elegant. We're trying to make things dead. The human weapons catalog was a museum of creative violence. Missiles that carried multiple nuclear warheads, kinetic bombardment systems that dropped tungsten rods from orbit, and something called Project Thor that could crack continents. They had weapons designed to destroy ships, stations, planets, and entire star systems. But the most disturbing revelation came when Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human xenobiologist, explained their species' combat psychology. Humans are persistence hunters, she said, displaying brain scans that showed neural pathways devoted entirely to aggression and pack coordination. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, then kill it with simple tools. We never developed the ability to back down from a threat. The Federation delegates exchanged worried glances. Their species had evolved beyond such primitive instincts. They fought for territory, resources, or political advantage, but always with the possibility of negotiation or retreat. What happens when humans encounter a superior enemy? Asked Counselor Thexara. We get angry, Dr. Vasquez replied. Then we develop better weapons and try again. Failure isn't defeat. It's a learning experience. Colonel Harrison brought up recordings from human military history. Wars that lasted decades. Battles where humans fought to the last soldier. Conflicts where entire cities were destroyed rather than surrendered. The aliens watched in fascination and horror as humans demonstrated their complete inability to accept defeat. Your species fights wars to extinction, observed Commander Zixtal. Only when the enemy threatens innocent people. Harrison corrected. The Void Swarm is consuming civilian populations. That makes this personal. Rodriguez activated another display showing human fleet formations. Their ships moved in coordinated patterns that maximized firepower, while maintaining overlapping fields of protection. It was pack hunting on a stellar scale. We've been monitoring your battles with the swarm, Rodriguez continued. Your tactics are too defensive. You're trying to protect everything, which means you can't defend anything effectively. We prefer offensive operations. Offense against an enemy that outnumbers us 1,000 to 1, questioned Strategic Planner Mortex. Numbers don't matter if you hit hard enough in the right place, replied Marine Captain Lisa Torres. We've been fighting for 10,000 years. We know how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and more numerous than us. The human battle doctrine was simple and terrifying. Instead of trying to match the enemy's advantages, they focused on exploiting weaknesses. They would use mobility to concentrate overwhelming firepower at single points, then move before the enemy could respond. What about casualties? Asked Medical Coordinator Yelani. Your tactics seem to accept significant losses. Death is part of the job, Harrison said matter-of-factly. But every human who dies takes dozens of enemies with them. We call it cost-benefit analysis. The Federation had spent centuries trying to minimize casualties, developing weapons and tactics that preserved life whenever possible. The humans had developed weapons and tactics that maximized enemy casualties, while accepting their own losses as necessary costs. Dr. Vasquez pulled up psychological profiles of human soldiers. The brain scans showed neural activity that Federation scientists had only seen in apex predators during hunting frenzies. Humans produce natural combat stimulants, she explained. Adrenaline increases strength, speed, and pain tolerance. Endorphins mask injuries and maintain focus. Norepinephrine enhances memory formation so soldiers remember lessons from combat. Your species drugs itself for battle, asked Chief Medical Officer Naltara. Our species evolved to enjoy battle, Vasquez corrected. These chemicals make fighting feel good. Humans in combat experience something we call flow state. Perfect focus, enhanced reflexes, and emotional satisfaction from successful violence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Federation had allied with a species that found warfare psychologically rewarding. Admiral Rodriguez stood up, his presence filling the room like gravity from a massive star. The Void Swarm made a mistake when they started eating Federation civilians. They picked a fight with the wrong galaxy. He looked directly at Commander Zixtal. You called for help against monsters. We answered. But understand this, humanity doesn't do half measures. When we're done, the Void Swarm won't be a problem for anyone, anywhere, ever again. The human delegation filed out, leaving behind technical specifications for weapons that violated several Federation conventions on civilized warfare. The aliens sat in stunned silence, realizing they had gained allies who made their enemies look tame by comparison. Outside the station, the human fleet waited in perfect formation, 67 ships loaded with enough firepower to sterilize solar systems. They had come to help, and that was exactly what made them so terrifying. The first battle between humans and the Void Swarm happened in the Rigel system, where a Federation mining colony had been under siege for 6 months. The swarm had surrounded the system with a living wall of biomechanical ships, slowly consuming asteroids and smaller planets while the colonists huddled on the main world, waiting for death. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the USS Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet through her ship's sensors. The Void Swarm vessels looked like nightmares come to life, twisted combinations of metal and flesh that pulsed with dark energy. Each ship was unique, grown rather than built, and they moved with the fluid grace of living predators. 67 enemy contacts, reported Tactical Officer Williams. Mass ranges from frigate class to battleship class. They're maintaining a spherical formation around the colony world. Adaptive. Bio-armor confirmed, added scanner specialist Jones. The Federation reports show these things learn to deflect energy. Weapons after the first few hits, Chen smiled, showing the predator teeth that made aliens nervous. Good thing we don't use energy weapons. All ships, this is Indomitable actual. We're going to show these space bugs why Earth doesn't have an apex predator problem anymore. The human fleet moved into attack formation with practiced efficiency, unlike the elegant symmetrical patterns favored by Federation forces. The human formation looked chaotic and aggressive. Ships spread out in overlapping fields of fire, each vessel positioned to support its neighbors while maintaining maximum offensive capability. The Void Swarm detected the approaching fleet and responded with typical arrogance. They had faced dozens of species over the centuries, and every enemy had eventually fallen to their adaptive technology. These new ships looked primitive, covered in crude armor and bristling with simple projectile weapons. The Swarm's flagship, a kilometer-long horror that had once been a Federation battlecruiser before being consumed and transformed, transmitted a bioelectric message that roughly translated to, "New prey approaches. We hunger for your technology." Chen's response was broadcast on all frequencies. USS Indomitable to unknown hostiles. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, before we demonstrate why Earth spent 10,000 years as an uncontested death world. The swarm creatures responded by opening fire with bioplasma cannons, streams of superheated organic matter that could melt through conventional armor in seconds. The Federation had learned to fear these weapons after losing hundreds of ships to them. The bioplasma streams struck the human fleet and accomplished absolutely nothing. The shots splashed harmlessly against reactive armor plating designed to withstand nuclear explosions. The swarm had optimized their weapons to defeat energy shields and conventional metal hulls, not armor specifically designed to absorb and disperse energy impacts. All ships weapons-free, Chen commanded. Show them what a real apex predator looks like. The USS Indomitable's main railgun fired first. The 2-ton tungsten slug left the barrel at 12% of light speed, crossing the distance to the swarm flagship in less than a second. The kinetic impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, punching completely through the biomechanical ship and out the other side. The swarm creature died instantly, its central nervous system vaporized by the shockwave. The ship began breaking apart as its living components lost coordination, drifting in expanding clouds of organic debris. Across the human fleet, similar weapons opened fire. Railguns, kinetic missiles, and gravity-accelerated projectiles slammed into swarm vessels with devastating effect. The biomechanical armor that had adapted to deflect energy weapons was completely helpless against simple mass moving at relativistic speeds. Target adaptation detected, reported Tactical Officer Williams. The enemy is trying to strengthen their armor against kinetic impacts. Too slow, Chen replied. They're thinking like energy-based life forms. They don't understand momentum. The swarm creatures tried desperately to adapt their bioarmor, thickening it against projectile impacts and hardening it against kinetic energy. But human weapons designers had spent centuries perfecting the art of making armor irrelevant. Nuclear-tipped missiles began detonating against swarm hulls, the atomic fires burning through hardened biometal like tissue paper. Depleted uranium penetrators punched through adaptive armor as if it were water. Kinetic kill vehicles moving at significant fractions of light speed delivered impacts that no amount of biological adaptation could deflect. Marine Sergeant Jake Williams watched the battle from the assault transport, Semper Fi, waiting for his chance to board enemy ships. His squad was equipped with weapons that the Federation considered primitive: projectile rifles, chemical explosives, and melee weapons designed for close combat. "Look at them burn," said Corporal Martinez, watching swarm ships break apart under human bombardment. 50 years these things have been terrorizing the galaxy, and we're killing them with bullets and bombs. The swarm fleet, which had never experienced meaningful resistance, began to retreat. The surviving ships tried to scatter, but human tactics had anticipated this response. Fast attack craft moved to intercept fleeing vessels while the main fleet continued its systematic destruction of the enemy formation. Indomitable to Colonial Defense Force, Chen broadcast to the besieged Federation colony, "System clear of hostile contacts. You can stop hiding now." The response from the colony came in a voice shaking with disbelief. "Human fleet, this is Governor Plexani. The Void Swarm. They're actually retreating. In 50 years of war, we've never seen them retreat." "They're not retreating," Chen corrected. "They're dying. There's a difference." The human fleet moved through the Rigel system with methodical efficiency, hunting down the last swarm creatures hiding in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. They showed no mercy, no hesitation, and no fear of an enemy that had terrorized galactic civilization for half a century. Marine boarding parties cut through swarm bioships like surgeons, their weapons and tactics optimized for close-quarters combat against living targets. The swarm creatures, evolved to deal with energy weapons and organized conventional forces, had no defense against human combat doctrine. Sergeant Williams led his squad through the corridors of a captured swarm vessel, following the sound of biomechanical chittering to the ship's central nervous system. The walls pulsed with alien life, covered in neural networks that coordinated the vessel's functions. "Contact front," reported Private Johnson. "Multiple hostiles biomechanical configuration." The swarm defenders looked like mechanical spiders crossed with organic nightmares, their bodies adapted for zero-gravity combat and equipped with bioplasma projectors. They had terrorized Federation Marines in hundreds of boarding actions. Williams's squad opened fire with automatic weapons, filling the corridor with high-velocity projectiles. The swarm creatures tried to adapt their carapaces to deflect the bullets, but human ammunition was designed to defeat adaptive armor. Explosive rounds detonated inside their bodies. Depleted uranium cores punched through hardened shells, and simple kinetic energy shattered biomechanical joints. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, 12 swarm defenders lay dead and no humans had been injured. "Too easy," muttered Corporal Martinez. "These things have been scaring the galaxy for 50 years? They never fought Deathworlders before," Williams replied, placing charges on the ship's central nervous system. "They adapted to fight civilized species with energy weapons and defensive tactics. We're neither civilized nor defensive." The USS Indomitable's after-action report made for interesting reading. 67 swarm vessels destroyed. 0 human casualties, mission time 4 hours and 17 minutes. The enemy that had stalemated the Federation for decades had been eliminated, with the same efficiency humans used for pest control. "Captain." Chen transmitted her report to Federation Command with professional satisfaction. The first engagement had proven that human weapons and tactics were effective against swarm biotechnology. More importantly, It had demonstrated that the galaxy's apex predators had finally met their match. The Void Swarm had spent centuries adapting to energy weapons, defensive strategies, and civilized warfare. They had never encountered a species that considered warfare a form of creative expression and treated overwhelming violence as the default solution to any problem. News of the Rigel. Victory spread through Federation space faster than light-speed communications. For the first time in 50 years, an entire swarm fleet had been destroyed without a single friendly casualty. The impossible had happened. The monsters had been beaten by bigger monsters. News of the Rigel victory spread through Federation space like wildfire through dry grass. Species that had been hiding behind fortress worlds for generations began sending messages to their governments, asking the same question. Were the humans really winning against the Void Swarm? The answer came from Admiral Marcus Rodriguez himself, broadcasting from the bridge of the USS Righteous Fury as his fleet hunted swarm remnants through the Vega sector. His message was simple and terrifying. The Void Swarm is no longer a threat to galactic civilization. Humanity is handling the problem. Commander Zixtal watched the tactical displays from Federation Command, trying to understand what he was seeing. Human fleets moved through space like hunting packs, tracking swarm vessels across multiple star systems and attacking them with coordinated precision. They didn't just fight the enemy, they hunted them. Sir, reported Intelligence Officer Kexani, the humans have established forward operating bases in 17 systems previously controlled by the swarm. They're not just clearing territory, they're occupying it. The human approach to warfare violated every principle of Federation military doctrine. Instead of building defensive positions and waiting for enemy attacks, they pushed deep into swarm territory and established bases designed for offensive operations. They turned asteroids into weapons platforms and seeded entire systems with nuclear mines. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room of Starbase Fury, a converted asteroid that human engineers had transformed into a fortress in less than 3 weeks. The facility bristled with railgun batteries, missile launchers, and something called Project Hammer, kinetic bombardment systems that could crack planets. The swarm is adapting to our presence, she told the assembled fleet commanders. They're avoiding direct engagements and trying to hit our supply lines instead. Colonel Jake Harrison, recently promoted after leading successful boarding operations against 12 swarm hive ships, pulled up enemy movement data. They're learning that we're more dangerous than they are. Smart move, but it won't help them. The Void Swarm had never encountered an enemy that fought like humans. Federation forces used energy weapons and defensive tactics, fighting clean, efficient battles with minimal collateral damage. Human warfare was brutal, direct, and absolutely devastating. New tactical doctrine, Chen announced. We're implementing the Terran Protocol across all human forces. The Terran Protocol was Admiral Rodriguez's masterpiece of military strategy, based on a simple principle. The best defense was an overwhelming offense. Instead of protecting static positions, human forces would maintain constant pressure on enemy forces, never allowing them time to adapt or regroup. Phase 1. Hunter-killer operations, Chen explained. Small squadrons track down individual swarm vessels and destroy them before they can signal for help. No survivors, no exceptions. Marine Captain Lisa Torres nodded approvingly. Her assault teams had perfected the art of boarding swarm ships and eliminating their crews without triggering biomechanical distress signals. My people are ready. These space bugs don't handle close combat very well. Phase 2. System denial, Chen continued. Any star system with swarm presence gets mined with nuclear devices. They want to consume planets? We'll make sure the planets explode if they try. The Federation delegates observing the briefing looked horrified. Nuclear mining was considered a war crime by galactic convention, but humans seemed to consider it standard procedure. Phase 3. Total extermination, Chen finished. We track the swarm back to their primary hive clusters and end this war permanently. Dr. Elena Vasquez provided the scientific justification for human tactics. The Void Swarm reproduces by consuming organic matter and converting it into more of themselves. Standard Federation doctrine allows them to retreat, regroup, and return stronger. Human doctrine prevents any form of retreat or regrouping. The results spoke for themselves. In 6 months of human involvement, The Void Swarm had lost more territory than in the previous 5 years of Federation resistance. Swarm fleets that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were being systematically hunted to extinction. But the most disturbing aspect of human warfare was their apparent enjoyment of it. Federation forces fought with grim determination, accepting casualties as necessary costs. Human forces fought with enthusiasm, as if they were engaged in some form of competitive sport. Contact bearing 27 Mark 6, reported Tactical Officer Williams from the bridge of the USS Pain Train. Single swarm vessel. Biosignature indicates Hive-class configuration. Captain Rodriguez smiled with predatory satisfaction. Hive-class means breeding population. Can't let that escape. All ships converge on target. Let's show them what happens when Deathworlders take things personally. The human response was massive and immediate. 12 warships moved to intercept the swarm vessel, their combined firepower sufficient to destroy a small moon. The enemy ship tried to flee, but human tactical doctrine had anticipated this response. Fast attack craft launched kinetic interceptors that damaged the swarm vessel's propulsion systems, slowing it enough for the main fleet to close range. The Hive ship's bioarmor began adapting to deflect kinetic weapons, but human engineers had prepared for this scenario. Target is hardening against projectile impacts, reported scanner specialist Jones. Switching to thermal weapons, nuclear-tipped missiles detonated against the swarm ship's hull, turning its adaptive armor into radioactive slag. The creature inside the ship screamed across multiple electromagnetic frequencies as its biomechanical systems began failing. Marine boarding parties cut through the weakened hull like surgeons, their powered armor protecting them from radiation and toxic atmosphere. Sergeant Williams led the assault on the ship's central nervous system, following corridors that pulsed with alien life. Hostiles ahead, reported Private Johnson. Multiple contacts, Queen-class bioforms. The swarm queens were massive creatures, each one capable of producing thousands of offspring. Federation forces had never successfully captured one alive, and killing them required sustained bombardment with heavy weapons. Williams' squad opened fire with incendiary rounds, filling the corridor with chemical flames that burned at temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees. The swarm queens tried to adapt their bioarmor to resist thermal damage, but human weapon designers had anticipated this response. Thermite grenades melted through hardened carapaces like butter. White phosphorus rounds continued burning even underwater or in vacuum. Plasma charges, the one energy weapon humans used regularly, cut through biomechanical tissue with surgical precision. The engagement lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the swarm hive ship was a drifting hulk, its breeding population eliminated, and its biomechanical systems permanently disabled. Another successful pest control operation, Williams reported to Captain Rodriguez. No human casualties, complete target elimination. The Federation observers watching the battle couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans had destroyed a hive ship, something that required an entire Federation fleet, using a single squadron and suffering 0 casualties. Admiral Rodriguez's famous declaration to the Galactic Council became legend throughout Federation space. You called for help against monsters. The monsters should have been more careful about which death world answered. The Federation began to realize they hadn't just gained powerful allies. They had unleashed something that made the Void Swarm look tame by comparison. The galaxy's apex predators had decided that innocent life was worth protecting, and they were willing to commit genocide to prove the point. Swarm forces throughout the galaxy began receiving new tactical instructions. Avoid contact with human forces at all costs. The species that had terrorized galactic civilization for 50 years was now running from creatures they couldn't understand, couldn't adapt to, and couldn't defeat. The tide of war had turned, but not in any way the Federation had expected. They had asked for salvation and received something far more dangerous: the protective friendship of apex predators who considered overwhelming violence to be a form of creative expression. Humanity had taken the distress call personally, and the universe was learning what that really meant. The final battle began with the largest fleet operation in galactic history. 47 human fleets comprising over 3,000 ships converged on the galactic core, where the Void Swarm had built their primary hive cluster. The mass of biomechanical vessels was so enormous it registered as a gravity anomaly on long-range sensors. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, stood on the bridge of the USS Earth's Hammer, watching tactical displays that showed an enemy force equivalent to several solar systems worth of converted matter. The swarm had spent 50 years consuming Federation worlds, turning planets and entire star systems into more of themselves. Analysis complete, reported Chief Science Officer Dr. Patricia Kim. The Hive cluster contains approximately 40,000 individual vessels, ranging from escort class to moon-sized dreadnoughts. Estimated total mass equals 13.7 Earth masses. Any normal species would consider this impossible odds, Rodriguez replied. Good thing we're not normal. The human fleet had come prepared for exactly this scenario. Every ship carried nuclear weapons, not as a last resort but as standard ammunition. The USS Earth's Hammer alone carried enough atomic warheads to sterilize a dozen worlds. And it was just one ship among thousands. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the first attack wave from the USS Indomitable, her ship loaded with kinetic kill vehicles designed specifically for this battle. All ships, this is Indomitable actual. Today we end the Void Swarm threat permanently. No mercy, no survivors, no retreat. The human battle plan was elegant in its simplicity. They would detonate 47,000 nuclear warheads in a carefully orchestrated pattern, designed to collapse the gravitational structure holding the Hive cluster together. The explosion would be visible from 50 light-years away, and would effectively end the Void Swarm as a galactic threat. Operation Sunrise is go, Rodriguez announced to the fleet. All ships commence final approach. Show them why Earth doesn't have an apex predator problem. The Void Swarm detected the approaching human fleet and responded with every weapon at their disposal. Bioplasma cannons fired streams of superheated organic matter. Acid projectiles launched from living artillery pieces. Swarm fighters swarmed toward the human ships like angry insects. The humans responded with typical efficiency. Point defense systems shot down incoming projectiles with depleted uranium shells. Electronic warfare systems jammed swarm communications. Nuclear-tipped interceptor missiles cleared paths through enemy fighter swarms. First wave weapons free, Chen commanded. Let's light up their day. The USS Indomitable's primary weapon was something called the Planet Cracker, a railgun that fired tungsten penetrators at 20% of light speed. The kinetic impact of each shot released energy equivalent to a hydrogen bomb, and the ship carried 300 rounds. Across the human fleet, similar weapons opened fire. The combined bombardment was like watching stars being born and die in fast motion. Swarm vessels that had survived Federation energy weapons for decades vaporized under the impact of simple mass moving at relativistic speeds. But the real horror was yet to come. Marine assault teams launched from human ships like bullets from a gun, their powered armor protecting them from radiation and vacuum as they carved through swarm bioships with chemical explosives and automatic weapons. Sergeant Jake Williams led Alpha squad through the corridors of a swarm super dreadnought, following tactical maps updated by real-time scans. The ship's interior was a nightmare of pulsing organic matter and mechanical components fused into impossible shapes. Contact front, reported Corporal Martinez. Multiple hostiles, super heavy configuration. The swarm defenders were massive creatures, each one the size of a Federation shuttle and equipped with bioplasma projectors and hardened carapaces. They had been specifically evolved to defend against boarding actions. Williams's squad responded with weapons that violated several galactic conventions on civilized warfare. Incendiary rounds filled with white phosphorus burned through biomechanical tissue. Depleted uranium penetrators punched through adaptive armor like paper. Thermobaric explosives consumed oxygen and created pressure waves that liquefied internal organs. Target the central nervous system, Williams commanded, directing his squad toward the ship's biomechanical brain. We need to shut down their coordination before they can signal for help. The assault through the super dreadnought was like performing surgery with explosives. Human weapons and tactics were optimized for maximum destruction in minimum time, turning what should have been a prolonged siege into a 20-minute massacre. Meanwhile, the main battle raged across millions of cubic kilometers of space. Human fleets moved in coordinated patterns that maximized firepower while maintaining tactical flexibility. They didn't fight like civilized species with energy weapons and defensive strategies. They fought like apex predators with nuclear weapons and an attitude. Phase 2. Initiation, Rodriguez announced. All ships begin nuclear deployment. The human fleet began launching their primary weapons, Nuclear devices designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to create a chain reaction that would destabilize the entire hive cluster. 47,000 warheads spread through the swarm formation like seeds of destruction. The Void Swarm realized what was happening and tried desperately to retreat, but human tactical doctrine had anticipated this response. Fast attack craft intercepted fleeing vessels while the main fleet maintained the bombardment pattern. Detonation in 30 seconds, reported Dr. Kim. All ships, withdrawal to minimum safe distance. The human fleet pulled back with practiced efficiency, their ship's armor and shielding designed to withstand the nuclear firestorm they were about to unleash. The swarm creatures trapped within their own formation could only wait for death. Operation Sunrise? Execute, Rodriguez commanded. 47,000 nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously, creating a fireball that briefly outshone the galactic core. The explosion was precisely calibrated to create gravitational instabilities that would tear the hive cluster apart from within. The Void Swarm's primary stronghold, built over 50 years of conquest and consumption, disintegrated in less than 4 minutes. Biomechanical ships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were reduced to their component atoms. The creature collective that had consumed 47 star systems died screaming across every electromagnetic frequency. When the radiation cleared, nothing remained but expanding clouds of superheated plasma and scattered debris. The Void Swarm, as an organized threat to galactic civilization, had ceased to exist. Mission accomplished, Rodriguez announced to the fleet. The galaxy is now a safer place for innocent life. The aftermath of Operation Sunrise changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The Federation offered humanity full membership with territorial grants spanning dozens of star systems. Captain Chen politely declined most of the offers but accepted one specific request: the right to establish Terran protection zones around any inhabited world that requested them. The galaxy learned that humans took the concept of sanctuary very seriously. Any species that threatened civilians in a Terran protection zone would face the full wrath of Deathworld justice. Pirates discovered that humans had long memories and a talent for creative revenge. Slavers learned that humanity considered forced labor a personal insult worthy of nuclear response. Would-be conquerors throughout the galaxy received the same message. Innocent life was under human protection, and humanity had nuclear weapons, railguns, and an attitude problem. The Federation's member species began sleeping better at night, knowing that the galaxy's apex predators had appointed themselves as protectors of civilized life. Children who had grown up hiding from the Void Swarm could now look at the stars without fear. Humanity established patrol fleets throughout Federation space, their ships serving as mobile fortresses that could respond to any threat within hours. The sight of human warships became a symbol of safety and security for species that had lived in terror for generations. Commander Zixtal, now serving as Federation liaison to the Terran Defense Force, often reflected on that first transmission from Earth. The Federation had sent a distress call asking for help against monsters. Humanity had responded by eliminating the monsters and appointing themselves as the galaxy's protectors. The universe was now watched over by creatures who had turned warfare into an art form and considered the protection of innocent life a sacred duty. The stars were safe, defended by apex predators who had decided that justice was worth fighting for. Humanity had taken the distress call personally, and the galaxy would never be the same. The age of the Void Swarm was over. The age of human protection had begun,